This is the You Can Learn Chinese podcast. For everyone who's trying to learn Chinese or reaching for the next level, you came to the right place. I am your host, Jared Turner, and I don't care how wonderful the hand soap smells, you should never walk out of a bathroom smelling your fingers. My co-host is John Pasden, and the fact that Head & Shoulders doesn't have a body wash called Knees and Toes is incredibly disappointing to him. In this episode, we've got a guest interview. Let's get to it.
So the full name actually in Swedish is Karl Vilhelmsson Emneby. But usually I just go by Karl Vilhelmsson or Karl Vilhelmsson Emneby. That's long enough as it is.
All right, we'll go with that. We'll go with Karl.
Yeah, Karl, exactly.
Okay, Karl, tell us what we need to know about you.
So I'm at Berkeley, actually. I'm finishing up my last year of Berkeley physics. And then I'm also a particle physics researcher at SLAC, which is the particle accelerator over here at Stanford. And then apart from that, I kind of love learning languages and I love surfing. And yeah, there's many parts to me,
And you're from Sweden?
I'm from, Stockholm, Sweden.
All right. Awesome. All right, Karl, why did you start learning Chinese?
So I think fundamentally it's that Sweden is a small place. Like it's a really nice place, but it's very small. And so I figured out at some point that if I only speak Swedish, I'll be very limited. And yes, you can live a very good life in Sweden, but I think as a person, I'm an adventurer. And if you're an adventurer, you need to live your adventure. And that means you got to go out there and find out about other cultures and other languages, other countries. And so for me, it became natural to first pick up English, right? That's the number one,
Because when I understand, like Sweden, I've heard it's like 80% of the people speak English there. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Swedish people overall speak good English, especially the younger ones. I think now, a lot of places actually, because of just the internet, a lot of places they speak more and more English. But I really decided that I wanted to go all in on it. Honestly, I kind of knew that I wanted to move someplace bigger, at least for a while, like America or like China or, one of those bigger places. So first I picked up English and then I figured, why stop? And then Chinese, I think how it started was that I got to choose in middle school, actually, back in Sweden, whether to study Spanish or Italian or French or Mandarin. Mm-hmm. And I figured Mandarin was I was into like Avatar, The Last Airbender, which isn't even Chinese, right? It's American. But I was just so interested in that whole learning something that's like fundamentally different than everything I knew. And so, that's how I actually got started.
Oh, I'm curious to know a little bit about what is that language education back there in Sweden? I mean, was Mandarin popular or what was more people gravitating towards Spanish or Italian or what? What was that like there?
Yeah, for sure. Spanish was the most common one, the most popular choice. Mandarin or Chinese was probably 10 people in the class, I'd say, versus Spanish, which might have been 50 people. But to me, it was just the obvious choice for so many reasons. I think it's the coolest one. I think also it gives you better job opportunities. It also adds on to uniqueness, actually. And for me, I can be a bridge between Europe and America and China in a way that I couldn't if I only spoke European languages. Then I could be a connector between different European countries, but I want to really have the whole world open,
Well, what was that experience like? I mean, you started in middle school and Chinese class, and in general, right, language classes and primary education may not be the most effective, right? But what was your experience like there?
I don't want to be disrespectful toward any of the other guys in there, but I think there was a gap for sure in the level of ambition between me and the other kids in there. I wanted to speak Chinese, I didn't want to know how to say 5 things in Chinese. I wanted to speak it. And so honestly, most of the time I just ended up self-studying. And my teacher was actually very supportive of this. She suggested, or maybe I suggested, whatever. We ended up having this journal where I wrote things before every class, and then she corrected it during class, and then she gave the journal back to me, and then I could write some more diary entries. So that was actually really good, especially for learning how to write.
Wow. So you were learning to handwrite as well.
Yeah. But I actually didn't know about components back then. These really? 212 pianpang. I just kind of memorized every character as a pictogram, without understanding the underlying logic. And then it was only probably 5 years later that I figured out that there's a logic to it. And then it got a whole lot easier.
Well, I mean, I would imagine certainly you saw some similarities perhaps between different characters.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I saw like the hand one and I saw a few other ones. And maybe I learned 10 of them, but I didn't realize that you can actually like memorize all 200 plus of them. And then it will be a lot easier to learn how to read and write in Chinese.
Wow. It's kind of cool to hear that story. Sounds like you were very self-motivated, right? You really wanted to learn, right? So you were taking your own steps to learn.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it comes down to what kind of person I want to be. And I think generally I want to be the kind of guy who doesn't dabble. I like to go all in, 100% full force. I think I never really struggled with motivation or anything like that. I think actually for everything I do, including Chinese, I just do things that I really enjoy. I always try to maximize fun, and that makes it really easy. I just don't do things that I find boring. And so for learning Chinese, I've mostly learned it, I'd say, through friends. It definitely hasn't been mostly through textbooks or anything like that. Like, that's okay, but you can do that for a few months and then you're bored. But making friends and reading like fun books and interesting material, that you can do forever.
Well, maybe you could talk about that a little bit. I imagine this also relates to the things that you were doing to learn the language, maybe when you were in school and the course, maybe a little afterwards, right? So maybe you could talk about how did you make some of these connections and what were some of these experiences you had that really helped you along the way?
I think the most serendipitous thing that happened is that my older sister did volunteering in Stockholm, and then she happened to meet this lady from Taiwan. And then she told her, my younger brother is studying Chinese. He's very interested in it. Would you be willing to meet up with him once a week and just have some tea and just chat a little bit? And she was happy to do it, actually. And so we ended up being good friends. Still to this day, I mean, now like 10 years later, we're still good friends. Whenever I'm back in Stockholm, we always meet up, have some matcha, and we fully speak in Chinese. Back then, it was really hard, actually, initially. Because back then, maybe I had initially a vocabulary of 300 words or something.
Yeah.
But now I've kind of 10x that, and now we can just have normal conversations in Chinese.
What was that like? The first time, hey, you're meeting with her, right? What was her name? What was that first experience like?
Oh, her name's Xiuyin 老师. Xiuyin. Yeah, I guess the first time it was kind of nervous, like everything, you do it the first time. It's a new person. I was maybe 15 or something. She doesn't tell me her age, but she told me the lunar year, but I forgot. But, somewhere in the 50 to 60 year range. So yeah, I guess the first time maybe I was slightly nervous, but I don't know. I think if you go in with an open mind and you realize that you're both here to have a good time and make friends, and I don't know, I think it was a positive experience from the beginning, actually.
No, that's great. And it sounds like she was very encouraging as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. She actually leveled up my ambition in Chinese, because initially, I did that journal 2 or 3 times a week, but she was like, no, we got to start doing homework every day. Here's a book, read 5 pages a day.
There's a true Chinese IE right there,
Yeah, she had ambition. So yeah, I probably spent at least an hour a night every day for many years, just reading these books that she gave me. I read a few pages, I did a bunch of translation whenever I didn't know a character. And then I sent it over to her, like an audio message. She corrected it. And then we kept on going like that.
Well, that's pretty cool, Karl. I think it's a good example here. Oftentimes people might think, oh, I have to take a class to learn Chinese. And the truth is, you don't. You can, right? And they can be great. But as long as you have that desire and focus, you can learn, right?
Yeah. I think really you should try to maximize fun in learning Chinese, but really in everything in life. I think it's a general strategy that works pretty well. I think things like Duolingo, you can push through and act like it doesn't suck for so long, but then eventually you're going to get busy and you're going to get tired and you're not going to want to do it as your leisure.
So what are some things that you did, though, to keep Chinese fun for you?
Yeah, I haven't turned it into a chore. I just talk to friends. And here in California, it's really easy. In Sweden, you kind of got to look because there's not a whole lot of Chinese people there. But here, it's really, really easy. So, I have maybe 5 or 10 friends that I speak Chinese with. I'd say I actually speak as much Chinese on a daily basis as I do English.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like in all formal settings, like in the accelerator, of course, I speak English. But, my landlady, we speak Chinese. And yeah, there's just a bunch of contexts where it's convenient here to speak Chinese. And also Spanish, actually, in California. Like you kind of got to speak Spanish. And yeah, Spanish and Chinese helps a lot for sure.
Well, I'm curious to know about some of these other friends and connections you made, especially back there in Sweden, Stockholm. You talked about this Taiwanese 老师 / teacher / IE / friend, right?
Yeah.
But what were some of those other connections you made there?
I think in Stockholm, she for sure is the one who did the bulk of the teaching. Here in California, it's much easier, but there, I mean, it was my real teacher in middle school who helped me out in class. And she was very good, actually. She was a really good teacher. But I'd say that Xiu Yin 老师, my friend, really did most of the helping there. But I think you only need like one friend to practice with,
Mm.
I think the world, you shouldn't see it as the kind of thing where you need to always maximize numbers. Like I need to have this many friends it's more like, do you have a few good friends? Then I think you're set.
I totally get that. I'm curious to know, Karl, like, did you have any breakthrough moments, like any stories you can think of, or like, wow, wait a second, like this, I'm really getting somewhere, or you felt like you're really starting to make progress, or things were really starting to stick?
Yeah, I started to feel after a few years that there was that in machine learning. Do you know when models start grokking? Like, you can train it, but then there's basically a jump where it just generalizes a lot better. And I kind of felt that after a few years that I started not really grokking, like there's still some things like documentaries and formal things that I struggle with in Chinese, but I started being able to generalize and pick up on different accents more and just kind of connect the dots also. Like if I understand 70 or 80%, I can kind of get the context and keep the conversation going. So I'd say it wasn't like a one day thing where it all changed, but I did start to feel after a few years of really not going too hard, but just doing things that are fun and therefore getting a lot of things done without the struggle. I started to feel that, yeah, I can actually like talk to people here in the store and I can actually just make real friends and have more meaningful connections beyond the like, 我要买一个苹果, like that level. Like I gotta, like real things.
So Karl, you did make a trip to China at some point, right?
Yeah, I did actually. So this was toward the end of high school. And at this point, I felt okay in Chinese. I wasn't that comfortable. But then I went there, I stayed there for 2 weeks, and I spoke only Chinese. And I realized that it was...
Only Chinese for 2 weeks. And you've been studying maybe a few years, 3, 4 years, 5 years?
A few years, mostly self-studying. Yeah, around there.
But I gotta say, I know, I'll just preface this, but I want to hear this story, but I know that having that friend of yours, that Taiwanese lady there talking with you almost every day, I know that had to make a big deal for all this. Most people go at at that stage wouldn't even be able to like go to China and like say, I'm just only going to speak Chinese. So like, I want to hear how this worked out for you.
Yeah, I think actually without her help, I couldn't have done it. I could have gone in and I could have struggled and understood whatever I learned in class, but it wouldn't have been sufficient. It's like non-Googleable information,
Yeah.
That stuff that you can only learn when you do real things effectively. And so, yeah, I landed there in Shanghai, went to Suzhou for 2 weeks. And yeah, fully only spoke Chinese. I realized, yeah, it's fine. A word here and there, I don't understand it, but that's not too bad.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's a big deal. Like just, hey, being able to get down there, get on the ground and start speaking.
Yeah. I didn't actually like it when I first got there. We land, I get out of the plane, and this plane went straight from Stockholm over to Shanghai. And I noticed that there was this like smog on the ground. This was back then. I heard it's not like that anymore now.
It depends on the day sometimes.
Okay. Yeah. But I just noticed this whole kind of like blanket of whatever dirt in the air. And I was like, where am I? And then we got out of the plane. All of the Swedes started complaining, like I remember there was this Swedish football team that went there and they all started saying like, is this like syrup air or like what's going on? And so initially I actually didn't like it too much. Also, like I was still a kid and it was a whole new environment and I didn't know anyone or anything there. All I knew was the things that 秀云老师 had taught me. That was it. Yeah, I actually remember I went to this police officer and I said, 警察先生,我要去苏州,我应该怎么办? Like, I gotta go to Suzhou. Like, what should I do? And he says, take this 出租车 and go to this train station in Shanghai and then take the Gaotie from there and then take a taxi from Suzhou. And so I got into I got into the taxi and I say, 师傅, 请您导表, like, could you please turn on the meter? Because that's something that my teacher told me back in Stockholm. And then it ended up being like 500 yuan or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
From Pudong Airport down to
the 火车站.
Might about taking you out to Hongqiao.
Yeah, Hongqiao.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, but that's pretty high.
Yeah, I think it was pretty high. But I didn't realize because it's, I was still a kid and that would be a little bit expensive in Sweden, but still pretty, within the normal range. And then I took this bullet train. It was like 40 yuan. And I was like, that's kind of weird. Like,
yeah.
It's like a much greater distance and it's like 10% of the cost. And then I get to Suzhou. I get into another taxi. This one's like another, just to get to my campus, like the college campus there, was another 400 or 500 yuan.
Oh no.
I'm like, seems pretty high, but whatever, let's just go with it. And then I get into my dorm and I talk to the roommate there. And this guy had taken a taxi all the way from Shanghai, from the airport in Shanghai, all the way to Suzhou, which I guess is like a few, 2 hours or something.
Yeah.
And he had paid less than I did just to get from the airport to the bullet train. And then from there, he's like, hilarious. Yeah, you should have paid like 10 or 20%.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
So initially I didn't like it too much, but then I think it was day 3 or so when I got past the initial like, oh my God, I'm in a whole new culture and I don't know anyone and anything. The culture shock. Yeah. And I started making friends. And I started getting more comfortable as well speaking Chinese because it's not only like, do you know the words? It's also, are you used to this? Are you comfortable doing this now? And I figured out that they have the best cuisine in the world. People are extremely friendly. I went to the like Guzheng, like the old town in Suzhou, and it's beautiful. I've learned that it's like unbelievably safe.
Yeah, very, very safe.
You can be out at night. It's good food, kind people, safe, interesting culture. I went to a museum and checked out some old, historical things. And I realized like this is a place that has an incredible history and a long history. I mean, if you go to Sweden, you go back 1,000 years, we were like Vikings. We were out throwing rocks at each other and stuff like that. Meanwhile, China, I mean, you can go back 2,500 years and you have, the Xizhou, Dongzhou, all these really advanced civilizations.
That's really cool. What were some of those things you encountered when you were in China that seemed, I guess, maybe unique or strange or something that took a little while for you to adapt?
Oh, one thing was that at least when I was there, which now is almost 10 years ago, a lot of people wanted to get a picture all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like that. I mean, I think that's fine. That's normal.
It's always been that way, Karl. I think it's going to be like that with the foreseeable future.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. And, I'm a physics guy. I'm like slightly introverted. I'm like... I never experienced that before, but I think that's normal and fine. And I think, my grandpa told me that back in Stockholm, back in the day when they didn't see a lot of people from other countries, he used to kind of do this kind of, I mean, I guess they didn't have cameras, but, like everybody was curious. I think it's just normal and natural and fine. But it was definitely something that I wasn't used to.
Yeah. I guess I got so used to that after living so many years in China that I remember after going back to the States on one trip, I remember I was in some sort of public space and I just thought to myself, why is nobody paying attention to me?
You got used to it.
And then I caught that thought. I'm like, oh, I've been in China too long. Like everyone stares at you, right? Everybody wants to take a picture. They maybe take a selfie, but you're really like in the back, stuff like that. I
mean, I will say, I think China's hospitality, like China's friendliness to tourists or visitors is something really admirable. Like I think, if you come into America, I think America's a really great place for many things, but I think sometimes if you come in as a visitor, initially it can be pretty rough, There's a lot of hospitality here and in Europe as well, but I think really we could learn something from how guests get treated in China.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Well, Karl, it seems like you've done a really good job at, making Chinese friends, especially when you've been, in the States there. I know, Berkeley, California, there is a large Asian population. So I know it's relatively easier, right? But that doesn't mean it doesn't require some sort of effort or it's not, if you can want to avoid that, you can, right? So how did you go about making Chinese friends, finding Chinese friends and making friends?
So one thing that's really helped me is that I live normally, well, now I'm in Palo Alto for the summer, but normally in Berkeley, I live in a place called International House. So it's literally the whole world pushed into one house. So
Wow.
it's like, maybe 15% Americans, 13% Chinese, and then every other group is maybe like, like between 0 and 3%, I'd say. But you can learn every language in the world in that house
Wow.
really effortlessly.
So is this like a big, like, student housing dorm building? What is this?
Yeah, it's kind of like a dorm building, and it's actually pretty old. It's from the 30s, so it's beautiful. It's built in this old Spanish architecture style. It's really beautiful, and there's a dining hall in there and library in there. So it's kind of like its own community, and you just make friends with a bunch of people in there. And so, my roommate and I, we spoke Chinese, so that helped a lot for everyday conversation. Probably, yeah, as I said, like maybe 13% of the people on the floor spoke Chinese. So really wasn't too hard there. I mean, you sit at a table, 1 out of 10 guys is a Chinese guy. Like, it would be very easy to make friends. Sometimes I go down to Chinatown also. I'm Swedish, and so I like crabs and crawfish and all these seafood, live seafood. And there I only speak Chinese, at least 95%. Sometimes I speak English, but the vast majority is for sure in Chinese. And it's interesting there that actually the majority of the people there are from Guangdong. So they speak 普通话 what's it called? 广东话 as a first language. And so there's even more of an even playing field because, Chinese is not my first language, and it's actually, or Mandarin, and it's actually not the first language of the majority of the people living there. And so, yeah, it just creates really nice conversations. I get my live crabs. We always have a fun time.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome. Yeah, that is kind of interesting. You mentioned that, like a lot of them, their first language is not Mandarin Chinese, 普通话, right?
Yeah.
I recall I had an assistant once, an employee of mine in Shanghai, and she didn't start learning 普通话until college.
Yeah.
You
see?
She was way out in Sichuan and like some small villages, and so it is kind of interesting in that respect. Now, they definitely got a leg up, right? Because they're usually learning, there are no characters, and, the languages are going to be, there's a lot of more cognates and similarities, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's fascinating.
Actually, even my barber here, she's Korean, but she learned 普通话 in America.
Really?
There's a lot of people that do this, it turns out.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, why did she learn Chinese?
I don't know. My guess is that back then there was probably a smaller Asian population in California. Yeah, I guess it kind of made sense there to have maybe build a community around that to speak Chinese because, like otherwise it would be hard, and maybe it was easier to learn Chinese than it was to get fluent in English initially.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
But I mean, really in America, you can learn all sorts of languages.
That is true. There's a diverse population here. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious a little bit about that in comparison to like Stockholm. Is there a diverse population? I kind of read that in different areas, but how accurate is that?
There is, in the sense of kind of big immigration, but it's not really maybe the same. It's not so much Chinese speaking people. It's more, I'd say, maybe Arabic speaking people. Yeah. And some other groups as well, but for sure not so many Chinese speaking people there.
Interesting. So
yeah.
I think that's a good point because, it's like there's the Chinese diaspora, as they say.
Yeah.
Pretty much nowadays, I think it'd be hard to find a country where there isn't some sort of contingent of Chinese population there.
Yeah. There are actually like a few blocks in Stockholm where you have a big percentage of the kind of Chinese stores in the country. Some supermarkets, but it's very, unless I told you, you probably wouldn't even think about it. It might be like 5 or 10 stores. It's really not a lot of people, which makes it actually even more miraculous that I got to know Xiuyin Lao Shi, because that was really such a serendipitous event.
That sounds really, really cool. Well, I'm curious to know, Karl, like, you've been learning Chinese now for what, 10 years?
Yeah, about 10 years.
You're studying your graduate school right now. You're in the States, and I know that's probably a whole nother story, how that even worked out. But how has Chinese impacted your life?
It's for sure made a massive impact in many different parts of my life. One thing is that, honestly, it's a great thing to add onto your resume. I will say, like, it's just the kind of thing that either you can do it or you can't do it. And if you can do it, you can't fake it, And when people see that you've actually gone through something like this, I don't think it's about being smart or anything like that. I don't think I'm a smart guy at all. I just think it shows that you have a certain curiosity and persistence, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that's tangible. Another one is that, of course, it's easier to make friends. Like the more common denominators you have with people, the easier it is to make friends. Also in California, in some contexts, it's actually pretty convenient to know how to speak Chinese. But probably the biggest one though is that it's fun. You know, like it opens up the world to me. I'm interested in Chinese history. I mean, this place has 5,000 years of history and all these Kongzi and Hanfeizi, Zhuangzi, all these interesting philosophers. Actually, I think fundamentally, if you want to understand the world, it's not really sufficient to look at the world from one specific viewpoint, you know? If you want to understand humanity, I think you need to look at many different sources of human culture. You can say that there's a difference between America and Europe, but they're both kind of based on Judeo-Christian values. I mean, they're based on kind of biblical values, you know? So the overlap is for sure at least 75% in terms of the culture, I think. But Chinese culture stems from Confucianism and Buddhism and Taoism, right? It gives me, I think, a richer experience of what it means to be a human. You know, I would feel kind of naked without it in a way, because I would limit myself to only looking at the world from one viewpoint all the time.
Wow. So it sounds, on listening to you, it's something that's really kind of expanded your point of view, expanded your horizons.
Yeah, like take like xiao, for instance, right? Like filial piety, like this respect for your parents. I think this is a great concept. Like I definitely think it can go too far. You know, this 君君长长父父子子, basically this idea of social stratification. I think there is a point for sure where that goes too far and that's not good. But I also think that respect for your parents and for people that have done things for you and for people that have built society before I was even born, I think that's a good value. And I think that's something that's, I mean, it's definitely not emphasized enough in places like Europe and America, I think, where, you know, like you can have kids like cuss out their parents, you know, like that is not a common thing in China. And I think that's, this idea of xiao is very good. I also think there's a lot of things that America and Europe have that are great values that I think China could learn a lot more from. But basically my fundamental point here is that having the capacity to pick and choose from many different sources, I think is a really good thing.
I can definitely see that. And I definitely agree. There's positive things from every culture. And it's interesting too, how sometimes there's things where it's not necessarily just right or wrong or even better or worse, but it's different and it gives you a different perspective on things that you wouldn't see otherwise.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, Karl, then what advice would you give to someone who's learning Chinese right now?
100% make it fun. That's the main thing. I think now it's probably even easier than it was 10 years ago, because now there's ChatGPT and you can just put it on voice mode and then talk to that guy all day long. I don't know if it's going to be very interesting conversations. For sure, it's factually good at giving you information. I don't know if it's a good, smooth talker in that sense. But otherwise, you can just download one of those like language learning apps. I have used that to some extent, you know, like you make friends online as well. I've used it actually for multiple languages. I don't know if I'd recommend it as the number one way to learn, just because sometimes, in my opinion, those conversations can kind of peter out after a few weeks. But it's for sure something that's more fun than only taking classes. I think taking classes can actually be valuable, but I think you should complement it with more casual things as well. So yeah, I'd say make friends as much as possible with people that want to speak Chinese to you. Then, you know, download some app to make friends, really anything that you find fun. And I've had my phone in Chinese for many years. You know, like you want that passive exposure is what you want. You really, because, you know, we're all getting busier and busier. Frankly, I don't have time to have too much formal commitments, but I do have some time here and there where I will be talking anyway. So if I can do that talking in Chinese, that's just even better. Or, you know, I need to look at my phone every so often. So if I can just get that passive exposure, that will really help a lot. And then you do this for a few years and you will really go a long way.
No, that's great advice. It reminds me a little bit just about making Chinese relevant to you, right?
Exactly.
Integrating it as part of your everyday life. And it sounds to me, Karl, that that's something you've done very well at.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, one thing I will also say is that learn the pianpang, like learn the components, at least the most basic 50 or 100 ones. Like understand, this one means dog, this one means hand, this one's grass, this is sun. Learn that because then, like Chinese characters have a structure to them. And usually one part is the meaning and one part is the sound. That kind of set me back for years because I didn't understand that. Very basic facts. There's six types of Chinese characters, but most of them have some combination of meaning and sound.
Yeah. It's true. And it's kind of funny too, because it's one of those arbitrary things like, yes, it does, but not always, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the fun of Chinese, right? And that's one of the unique aspects of the language.
Yeah. I mean, these characters are thousands of years old. So even if it made sense when it was written for a specific character, it might be outdated now. For other characters that are more recent or, for whatever reason, you can still kind of understand how to pronounce it based on what it looks like. But yeah, it's one of those, it's 50-50,
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But knowing it for sure will speed up your learning by at least
100%.
30 or 40%. Yeah,
totally
100%.
Well, no, 100% agree that it will advance a 30, 40%. It's like 60% of the time, it works every time, right?
Yeah.
Well, Karl, thanks so much for taking the time to share your story with us. It's been fun kind of digging in and hearing about your own unique experience and journey in learning Chinese.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jared.
You have been listening to the You Can Learn Chinese podcast. I'm Jared Turner, co-founder of Mandarin Companion, alongside my co-host John Pasden, co-founder of Mandarin Companion, founder of All Set Learning, the Chinese Grammar Wiki, and Sinosplice.com. Got a Chinese learning story? We want to hear it. Head over to our website and apply to be featured on the show. And if you like today's episode, hit that subscribe button, share it with a friend. It's the best way to help us reach more Chinese learners like you. You can also leave us a review on iTunes. We love hearing from you. Or come connect with us at MandarinCompanion.com and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter for more tips, updates, and good times. Want a fun way to boost your Chinese? Grab a Mandarin Companion graded reader available on Amazon, Apple Books, Google Play, and wherever you get your books. Apologies to John Cena. We just ran out of time. The You Can Learn Chinese podcast is produced by myself, Jared Turner, and is edited by Jasper Chua. A big thanks to our special guest, Karl Vilhelmsson, and of course, thanks to my co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, John Pasden. See you next time.